coaching engagement ethically when you view that the coach is not fit for coaching when they insist on coaching or the third party stakeholders insist on coaching?
So the questions around did you catch that, Francis? When the coach?
Yep.
Oh, you got that. Okay.
I think it's similar to what Jonathan has mentioned earlier. And if you don't have the capacity and you have to tell them you don't have the qualification, and coaching is, I'm supposed to not do any harm according to the code of ethics. So you can quote the code of ethics. You can say that those are the guidelines under which you operate and you work as a coach, and you don't have the qualification, you can't support the client to move forward. Plus, there are some areas like even with the coaching, we can't see an improvement in the client, either the emotional state or the behavioral state or the cognitive state. There is no improvement. We can't. The coaching has been done. But since we can't, and then that becomes our data point, and we can collect that data and prove it to the client and the sponsor that we can continue coaching, but it is not going to support you. It's not going to help to uplift you, not going to shift. There is no improvement. So we can use these points to support our decision. And nobody can really force anyone to be their coach. Nobody can force anyone to be the client.
Yeah.
So it is still a relationship where there is a lot of trust and safety and respect. And we have to follow that.
So this kind of ties into another question, and this would link both, Francis, to you and Jonathan, is we will have clients that will be working with a therapist and will also be working with a coach. So Jonathan, maybe starting with you, how are those relationships developed? I mean, and we're going to look at it from the context of confidentiality, and how do you bridge the two if that's the case? Or is this something that's driven purely by the client? So, you've got a client that's working with a therapist and a coach.
You need a release of information for something to go on like that. So for example, there are a couple of coaches with whom I have on multiple occasions shared a client. It's worked generally very well. Like, they've had very specific work that they want to do. So particularly if it's career counseling or public speaking or something that is quite discrete, quite specific, kind of as Enoch described, like it's a specific, tangible thing. Then if the client permits us to share information both ways, I can say, look, for public speaking, when the person gets really nervous, please ask them to float back to where does this memory come from? Because I haven't been able to do it in session. So there can be a sense of us using each other to go faster in our specific work. And I've just found it really good. Just last night, I was talking to a coach regarding a client that we both share. This is a client who is highly dangerous, somebody who may indeed not be around in a little bit of time. Now, the coaching is relevant and helpful, but the big bad issues are my responsibility. But I'm happy to work with a coach as long as we stay within our own boxes and there isn't confusion there. It can work really well. But you need a signed release of information.
So, Francis, what are the ethical responsibilities for the coach then, as they're bridging these two relationships and working with the client and then also with the therapist?
According to the Code of Ethics, there's one of the standards is actually just to reach out for help to other professionals. So what exactly you need to do is not spelled out, not clear. It's just to reach out. Even in the core competencies, they say, please refer clients to other support professionals. Please refer clients to other support professionals. when you notice that you don't have the capacity. But what else can you do? Can you work in tandem with them? Do you actually release information? That is not specifically, clearly, succinctly stated in the code, nor in the core competencies. Yeah. So for my case, I will refer them to a psychologist, therapist, and I don't see them until they are ready to resume the coaching. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so Jonathan, you were describing, things are based around a release in terms of how much conversation is between the therapist and the coach, and the coach.
So some standard templates you can download saying these two people can speak to each other, or this person can give information to that person only, and it's not two-way. So yeah, I have clients sign one of those before I engage with another professional.
Tina, what other questions are coming your way?
Sure. There's a question. It's such a vast and huge gray space for us coaches to navigate. What are a few readings or books or articles one can read to get into a better space of knowing?
Ask
I
Google.
really wish I could say. I really wish I could. I just think this is a egregiously empty area, that there really is a crying need for us to know when to refer from coaching to a mental health professional. And there are some great authors in it, but as far as I know, there's nothing definitive. We all have different ideas. There's no good psychometric instrument that I know of that coaches can use. It's I think nothing short of egregious. This is a really important area for someone to work on. I don't know. I would love to know. And if somebody finds a good, something good, please send it my way, because I would like to know it.
Francis, anything?
Yeah, I think we still need to rely heavily on the Google or, in the Thought Leadership Board, we are thinking about collaborating with other helping professions, because other helping professions have been here much, much longer than the coaching profession. So we are thinking of how do we actually leverage on their knowledge, their database, their research. It's so rich, and we can definitely learn a lot. So what is it that we can do to link up, and so that the collaboration becomes strengthened, and then the learnings can be shared, and so that then both of us will actually increase our knowledge capacity. But that still, we are just started with some convenings, and we realized those were the findings of the convenings. So next year, 2022, then we want to put more research into place, how to connect even further and strengthen that. So,
and is this, oh, sorry, Francis, is this covered in the white paper that the ICF recently published, I guess, a couple of months ago, around coaching versus therapy? Would some of that be in there?
Okay, I haven't seen that yet.
Okay.
So, yeah.
We got a very specific question, and this is interesting. It's looking at, Jonathan, are there indicators to when to refer when working with teenagers? And are there different signals for mental illness when dealing with teens versus adults? So
I think the basics still stay the same. I think with teenagers, and I'm not a specialist, I do work a little bit with teenagers, but I'm not a specialist with them. And there are specialists. When I have worked with teenagers, I've often been struck by the speed at which things change. And that can be very alarming. Today it's suicidality, and then tomorrow there's nothing. And at some level we can therefore go, therefore it's not a big deal, they're going to be fine tomorrow. But it can change for the better, and it can change for the worse. And so there is a volatility in a teenage mood. And so I think fundamentally, no, it's still those 4 points, like emotions, cognition, behavior, and lack of improvement, but maybe with a little bit more speediness, a little bit more, you want to be a little bit more responsive, I think, with teenagers. And if you catch it young, you can save them the mental health bills later on in life. Like you can save a lot of distress if you catch it young.
Yeah. And the key thing there, are you saying it just enables the young person to become better equipped with what they're dealing with when you're able to catch it early?
Yes, and I think better equipped to deal with the immediate stresses and to learn methods of being more resilient. So rather than going out with my buddies and getting into a gang fight or getting drunk, I can learn how to tolerate that distress, which means 10 years on, when I'm a manager somewhere, I have better habits in place.
Yeah. Frances, one of the things that a lot of the coaches have been talking about is how the coaching topics have changed in the last 2 years, especially as we're dealing with COVID, increased stress, anxiety. What have you noticed? If you look at a coaching practice today, maybe even compared to 5 years ago?
Well, I've been a coach for 12 years, and during the initial stages of the COVID-19 pandemic, all coaching stopped because my clients were corporate clients, and organizations were in the dark. What's happening? Why we can't go to office? And so many changes were going through that no coaching really happened. So what were they feeling like? What were they going through? I had no clue. I could only guess from what I was reading in the digital news. Yeah. Then when coaching actually resumed, then the issues came up. The issues of how do we handle virtual teams? We are all leaders of teams. It is heartbreaking for me that I can't see my team. Because I can't see, I can't engage with them. So they had this very myopic viewpoint because it's something new to them. So that became such a predominant pattern that the leaders were getting demotivated. The leaders were getting like, I can't do my work. I can't motivate. I can't inspire. I can't get results. My productivity is low. So that became the issue from one organization to the next organization to the next. So the pain of not being with their team. I think that was the superstar issue with them. So if I could see the change, I would say that would be the most number one shift or focus for the leaders. The pain in their heart of, how to engage with their team that is virtual. I think that was the first one. Then the second one was dealing with their managers. How do we actually produce the results so that the management of the organization, the senior management team, can really appreciate that my team are working as hard as they can, but productivity is definitely lower. So how do they lower their expectations? So these are middle, right? So they need to deal with the lower their growth as well as to work upwards to help them to understand that their expectations need to be lowered. So how do they manage that shift? So I think these were the two big pain points for the leaders that I was coaching.
One of the things we haven't spent time talking about this evening is, and I'd be interested to hear from both of you, and Jonathan, we'll start with you. Before somebody ends up seeing a therapist, what are some just well-being habits that we can start incorporating in our lives? Because we're talking about this third cycle that seems to be coming through with COVID. What are you sharing with your clients?
Just generically, eat decent food, sleep a decent amount, exercise enough, try and get a bit of sunlight, and engage with people. And if spirituality is important to you, then engage with spirituality. Try and have a dose of something good each day. You know, if you like playing tiddlywinks, or you like making pottery, or you just do something that keeps you happy while maintaining the baseline of eat, move, and sleep.
And how about you, Frances?
Yeah. So for my student coaches, I think what I've done is I've actually like built a community,
Yeah.
so that they are not alone. And even in organizations, when I take on new clients, I ask them, who is in your tribe? They say,
Yeah.
what tribe? Then I said, you cannot walk this journey alone, because I will come in, let's say, once a month, but you need the support. Who is in your tribe? If you don't have, I want you to find people. It could be within the organization, it could be outside the organization, it doesn't matter. But you need to have at least 1 to 2 people who are in your tribe. So what's the significance? Because as they are journeying, there will be emotional ups and downs, and they need support. They need somebody that they can call. So in a community of the student coaches, then they know they have someone to link up to. Hey, I'm not sure about this. Am I setting up the agreement properly? Do I need to do this? So just somebody, and that's called the tribe. So instead of community, it's also a tribe to support them. Having people in your tribe actually really supports you in seeing, in building your resilience, in seeing another perspective, in letting someone else hear you and see you. And that basic need of yours can really help you to weather the storms, or weather the waves as the waves. I think that is a really important point that I try to instill in the student as well as in my clients.
Yeah, and I think this community you're describing is something that can be extended beyond. I think that's one of the things everyone has done, is reached out to their little hub, their little network of just, somebody to connect with and share. And given, I think so many people are being displaced geographically, Tina, other questions?
Yes, one question, could there be a foundation course or certification that coaches can go through affiliated to psychological societies that can help coaches assess better and enable them to use the instruments like GAD-7 mentioned earlier only for assessment purpose?
I would love that. That's such a fabulous idea. I really would. Though it's completely, like to me, it's almost unethical it doesn't already exist. Like, it's so important. And frankly, I think more and more business managers are going to be doing courses like that. I don't know of any, but I think it would be very, it must happen soon, because it's such a good idea.
So Jonathan, we're waiting for you then.
Yeah, right.
Another thing to add to your list of things to do.
And just to chime in with what Jonathan has said, I think many organizational leaders, and I met 2 recently, just within the month, and one of them said that one of their staff had changed her behavior. I said, what do you mean changed her behavior? Well, she was very bubbly and she was a performer. She used to listen to us and get work done. And now suddenly she has changed. I said, suddenly? What is she doing now suddenly? She's not bubbly. She's not talking. She's zoned out. So when we ask her questions, she's like in like the body is there, but the mind is completely somewhere else. So I said, did you talk to her? He said, maybe it's my fault. I said, why your fault? Well, for the past 6 months, I've been coaching her, not coaching her, sort of encouraging her, you should get married, you should get married, you should get married. And she got married and she changed. So I said, so what are you doing now? Since you've seen a drastic, like day and night kind of a clear line. He said, I'm waiting for her to come back to her bubbly self, and I'm waiting for her to, come and become the performer again. Then I said, So you can't see the sign yet. He can't see that this is such a serious. So I just shared a little bit that if a person is under fear, they will respond either by flight, they will run away, they will disappear, or fight. They will actually be aggressive and show anger, or they will freeze. I said, she is frozen. Her body is there, but her mind is just frozen. She can't function in the office. I said, you need to get help. Let her get, what is the organization, what is the support system like how Enoch was sharing, the I2 story. It's about me, my story, my story. I said, get some help for her. If you don't, she may end up even worse. Who knows? The worst that can happen could be suicide. But we don't want to wait till that. We don't want to wait for any other sign. This is already a big sign for you. Get her help. So he said, oh, I never thought about that. I said, you have to talk to the HR and see what sort of help that you can give her. So that was a really like an eye-opener that organizations, like what Jonathan was saying, it's time organizations, managers, leaders start to get educated about what are the warning signs, what are some signs.
So that leads to the question then, because I know very broad group that's signed in tonight. So let's look at the group that's not necessarily sitting in the coach's chair. So it could be the organizational leader, it could be the educator, a community leader. What are the conversations that should be held to enable us to understand what is going on with the people around us? How do we start that? Jonathan, what would you say?
I think it's very tricky to create that culture if it's not already there. It requires, I think, the leaders to be open. So, for example, a leader I'm working with said, to create a more candid culture, I've told my top team that we're having an offsite and they've got to talk about their greatest vulnerability. And I almost choked on my tea. I said, so you're going to start that one off, are you? And she goes, yeah, I thought I would. And I said, when I heard what she was going to say for her greatest vulnerability, I was like, seriously? Like, you don't think people can see straight through that and know that that's nonsense? It's like, I think you've got to try and be sincere and to be honest and to be willing to expose. And the worst thing I think would be to put pressure on people to try and divulge, but to put out the offer, say, how are you doing? They can blow it off and say, fine. Or they can then go, actually not, they can take the next step. But to put out the invitation without putting pressure into it, I think is the way to go.
And Frances, what have you found in your experience as you're coaching executives and organizations?
Yeah. So the previous example that I gave was on that, a leader who is not aware. And another leader that I met, he said that one of his staff was not performing. So after 6 months, he was so tired of trying to get her to perform. He said, I'm going to put her on a performance improvement plan, PIP, where she's going to be monitored. What is it you're going to do and how you're going to do it? And so very closely monitored as to whether she can perform or not. And that's when she told him, I'm a depression case. I've been taking depression tablets for 6 months. I'm under depression medication. And he was like, I never knew that. I thought you were just a poor performer. So when is it time for organizational leaders to actually learn what are the signs that you can see, the change in behavior? Then why are they not performing? Who is going to sit down and listen to them? Is there somebody who's, listening to them? So some form of just indoctrination or learning about these are the key signs that you look out for. I think that needs to be in place and then shared with, the platform to need to be created, something like this, where leaders are actually sensitized as to what are some of the issues. And there was one more case where this leader came to me and he was like, when they keep on shaking their legs and doing this, he was like anxiety oozing out of him from head to toe. He was like, he just couldn't sit still. And I'm like, what is he anxious about? What is it? So I said, what is all this body? From his body movement, you can see that he is like, I can't cope with this. It's going to explode within me. So I'm asking him, so what is it? He said, I just got promoted. I'm not just a manager. I am the manager's manager. Plus, I got promoted to regional. So I'm like Asia Pacific, the leader in Asia Pacific. I said, wow, congratulations. But what is all this anxiety, this hand moving and leg moving and the body is moving? Then he said, I can't cope. I have to do a report. And this report, I can't lose faith. I just got this promotion and the pressure is on me. I have to deliver this report. I can't make a mistake. I need to be like so perfect. And then I asked him, just take a deep breath. Hold on. I'm here. I'm listening to you. Just take a deep breath. Just calm down. Then as he was breathing, this word dropped into my mind, the word prototype. And I'm like, what on earth am I going to say prototype to this guy? But being a coach, so I said, I wonder what prototype has got to do with your report. He stared at me like, the deer's eyes glaring in that headlights. So I said, why? What's happening? That's it. I can use the report as a prototype and create that as version 1. And then I can improve that and make it version 2. Oh, you are a gift. I didn't know that. But I was thinking if he's got real anxiety problems, I won't be able to manage. I was going to actually refer him. But that one word actually helped him to calm his nerves. And then he said, I can use this. Every time I get anxious about, I can always use this. It's just a prototype. So you never know that you think the client needs, but yet somehow his behavior can shift. You can see some improvement. His body is changing. His mental capacity, cognitive ability has changed. So sometimes, it all depends how present you are with the client, and you think he needs mental support from a counselor, but actually it can be through a coaching session. So sometimes you just can't, he's suffering from anxiety, let me refer him. So it's not like such a clean.
There was you triggered actually a really good question that came in a couple of days ago. And Jonathan, the question was, if you have a client who's already diagnosed to have depression and already taking medication, is this a client that, if they want to be working with a coach, is this a good client for a coach? In that case, what are your, and this is specifically coming in from a coach.
It certainly doesn't rule out coaching with the client. Myself, I'd want to, as the coach, I might want to work with whoever that person's working with, or are they simply taking medication from their GP or their psychiatrist? I think it's ideal if you can collaborate, but often that's not possible. I would say just be extremely careful. One of the main reasons, I think a study done in the 1990s showed that 50% of coaches, people coming in for coaching, actually wanted mental health treatment. And it was conducted again about 10 years later. And they found it was more like 25%. So maybe there's a change, but there is an enormous number of people who are coming into coaching actually wanting mental health treatment. And so be really suspicious. If someone's pulling you into being their therapist, then I'd go, oh, no. But if they're looking for something within your bailiwick, within your capacity, then great, like go for it. I wouldn't want to, I'd want to know a little bit about the depression, because if that gets worse, you want to make sure they go back to the psychiatrist or the GP or the psychologist. But it's not a rule out. It's just something to be careful with.
They had a beautiful sub question too, and is what conversation should be held to determine whether they're a suitable coaching client. So I think what they're also saying, so how do I move into dialogue with that client who's wanting to work with the coach?
I think if you can be kind of candid about what you're comfortable with and not, that can probably help the client. But say, okay, thanks for telling me that you have depression and that you're on antidepressants. What do you think I need to know, and who are you working with, and what would be the signs I should bear in mind to make me think that you should go back to your physicians or whoever it is? So just being very candid, like, I'm happy to work with you on this stuff, but if there are signs, educate me. What do I need to look for? Certainly, like if I created a coaching program and took Cindy's advice and sort of didn't just talk, I would make everybody memorize the criteria for depression. Like, it would just be, everybody in the world should know this, and to then, because you'll see it, you'll realize how common it is, and it won't be so scary, and you'll go, okay, yeah, this person's a little bit got the blues. That doesn't mean they should not come to coaching. Well, no, this person really does have the blues. They got the proper thing. They absolutely need to go and see a mental health professional. So I think familiarize yourself with the diagnosis of your client, be it anxiety, depression, whatever it may be, trauma. Work within your bailiwick, your area of expertise, but ask them where, if things are going south, how would I know? And tell me what to do.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great guidance. It seems simple once you've said it, but it's very good guidance. It was interesting. I was reading a Korn Ferry study that came out, and this was Asia Pacific data, sorry. And it said 1 in 3 in 2020 were feeling burnt out. And 1/2 of those surveyed were feeling emotionally exhausted. That kind of goes back to the statistic that you shared at the beginning, Jonathan, when you said, look around the room. And can you imagine, like, going back to that question you asked, look to the person next to you, 1 of 2 will be emotionally exhausted,
Yep. And I don't know how many, like, I don't know if the people viewing can see the 4 screens that I can see, the 4 people, but yeah, statistically, at least 1 of the 4 of us will have a psychopathology this year. And given COVID, we could possibly double that number. It's just a shocking thought.
Yeah. Tina, I can see so many questions coming in. I'm gonna rely on you, because otherwise I would be ignoring these guys and reading. So I'm gonna throw it over to you. Yeah.
Sure. One of the questions is, what are some of the early warning signs one can be mindful of while observing or dealing with mental illness around us? One can be the first line of support. How do we as coaches build greater awareness around it?
Help me, what is the question? How do we?
What are some of the early warning signs one can be mindful of while observing? Yeah.
Okay, so like the cheap and easy way is, how does this person make me feel? So if you're someone who's fairly in touch with your own emotions, your blues, your depressions, your anxieties, whatever, you're comfortable with your own emotions, and you're sitting with someone and you're feeling the blues, that might be indicative of something. Now, it could simply mean that you didn't have enough breakfast and you're hypoglycemic, or it could mean that you are feeling from them something that they're carrying. And that's a wonderful skill to work with. And so as psychologists, you spend quite a bit of time often, depending on the school you go to try and train that up. Like, if you're sitting with someone and you are feeling an emotion, I was just like, I feel intolerable. I just feel so annoyed with this client. Or I'm just annoyed with life. Oh, this is a client who has, and whatever your thing is, I hate, anxiety. Oh, they're probably carrying anxiety. And so that's one way. Another is just those 3 things: the cognitive impairment, emotional distress, and the behavioral problems. To sort of check into those would be the places to look. But first, if you can, look in yourself. How is this person making me feel?
Frances, doesn't that go back to what we were talking about the other day? So it's and even what you touched on earlier about the ability to self-regulate with emotions. And can you speak to that just a little bit more around, as coaches, emotions? And, so often a coach may really connect to what is going on for the client.
Yeah. So this comes back, thanks Cindy. This comes back to our core competency number 5, maintains presence. What does maintains presence for the coach mean? It means that the coach can manage their own emotions to stay present with the client. So whatever the emotions the client is bringing, whether sadness or joy, the coach can regulate it and maintain that, manages that emotions. So whatever emotions come, for example, tears, if the client comes with the tears, then the coach sees that as valuable information. So because why? Because like tears are like words which the soul cannot say. So to the coach, those are valuable information for me that I can actually help the client to unpack, but the client has got no clue yet. All the client is experiencing that. But why? What is it? What is standing in the way? What is making me touch that part of my soul, of my being? So the coach needs to learn how to demonstrate, that is also in maintaining presence, demonstrate confidence in working with strong client emotions and during the coaching. So strong client emotions means the whole range. So when the client is crying or tearing, what does the coach need to do at that time to hold that space and build that capacity within themselves as coaches? Just be. Just be with the client. No need to say anything. Just holding that capacity of, I just be here with you. I can see you. I can sense you. I can hear your pain that you're going through. So by being with them, actually, I'm already being there by 100% empathy is there. Just being there. When there's 100% empathy, there's 0% judgment because it can't coexist. So your being there is giving the energy to the client, and they won't be crying the whole day. They will cry for a short period because the tears will dry up. So no movement from the coach, just hold that space of empathy and 0 judgment. So that is one piece of the training that we do for coaches. So doing that actually expands your capacity, right? And one of the student coaches, right? He's there. He doesn't have the capacity when the client was tearing. Okay, she was tearing. So because he didn't have the capacity, this is what he said. He interrupted the client and he said, so what music do you like to listen to that will make you happy? So he took the client away. He didn't see her. He didn't hear her. He didn't be with her. He didn't show the empathy. He didn't have the capacity to manage that emotion. So he ran. He ran away and tried to take the client. So that is really like not a good practice for us coaches. So the easiest way, or what we can train ourselves to be, is just be with the client with empathy and allow that space for them to cry. And even if one tear rolls down from the coach, it's okay because you are having empathy for that client. And as soon as the client is finished crying, then you can hold that space for a while and ask the client, are we in a good space to continue, or would you like to stop the session? Would you like to continue? And if they say yes, I'm okay to continue, share with me what's behind those tears. Just asking one question can help the client, because the client already feels your trust, 0 judgment, empathy. That client feels safe to actually share with you what the client is enduring or going through. So I think that's the capacity that we need to train.
Francis, what I love about you is when you're describing this, you know exactly which competency number 5, page 3. And you can tell it's in your DNA, the work you have done around both the core competencies and the ethics. And I think that's, yeah, I am so mindful of time. Tina is giving the eyeballs like time.
It's about time, yes.
So I just very quickly, because I know Tina, you have a few things you want to share with the audience as well. So first of all, I just want to say a heartfelt thanks to all of you today. And Enoch, hopefully you're getting this message.